So imagine you are standing in the middle of this highly curated, very quiet, deeply historic European museum. And you just reach into your pocket and you pull out a massive, slightly illegal, roaring firework.
And you're standing there like looking for a match to light the fuse.
Right, exactly. That is exactly the kind of tension we are dealing with today on this GT7 car introduction deep dive. Because the mission today, what we are taking, the Nissan Z Performance 2023, which is this 3.0-liter V6 twin-turbo rear-wheel drive brute pushing 400 horsepower, and you are going to unleash it on the legendary Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps.
I mean, it's not just a virtual track day in Gran Turismo 7. You are essentially smuggling an absolute outlaw into European motorsport's most sacred cathedral.
Yeah, okay, let's unpack this, because it really is an outlaw, right? Like, especially when you look at the real-world context of this machine.
Oh, it absolutely is. The new Z is, it's this neoclassic. It's this incredibly delicate balance of modern, cutting-edge thermal engineering, but it's wrapped around a 50-year heritage. But the crazy reality is, you essentially cannot get this car in real life.
Yeah.
It's practically a phantom.
Right, because, even beyond that initial proto-spec edition, which, if I remember right, was hyper-limited to just 240 units in the US and 240 in Japan, as, like, an homage to the original 240Z, even the standard production model got completely bottlenecked.
Bottleneck, yeah. So Nissan implemented this highly complex new painting technology at their Tuchigi Intelligent Factory. They actually figured out a way to paint the resin parts and the seal body together at the exact same time, which ensures this absolutely flawless color match.
Which sounds great on paper.
It's a brilliant process, yeah, but it caused massive production delays. And then you compound that with global supply chain issues, and they actually had to suspend new orders in Japan back in 2022.
Wow. And returning to that firework in a museum analogy, the most ironic part of all of this is that the European Union essentially banned the car altogether.
Yeah, the regulations are just too tight over there.
Right. Strict modern emissions and noise regulations meant that Nissan, they looked at the map, they looked at the pure, raw, internal combustion engine they had built, and they just decided it simply wasn't viable to sell it in Europe, which I think makes firing up GT7 and dropping this exact car onto the tarmac in Belgium the ultimate forbidden fruit.
It totally is, but if you want to survive Spa in a high horsepower rear-wheel drive outlaw like this, you really have to understand the weapon you are holding. Because this car, it was not born in a sterile boardroom.
Oh.
It exists purely because of the stubborn vision of Hiroshi Tamura, who is Nissan's chief product specialist.
Tamura is an absolute legend for that. Because instead of, running massive focus groups and waiting for $100 million budget approvals, he essentially went rogue.
He really did.
He just walked right up to Alfonso Albeza, Nissan's global head of design, and just asked him to sketch a new Z. It was a grassroots passion project right from the jump.
And because it started from pure passion, Tamura's philosophy for the car was entirely different from the industry standard right now. He didn't want a cold, calculating machine that's just obsessed with aerodynamic downforce and, shaving tenths of a second off a Nürburgring lap time.
Right, it wasn't about the raw spreadsheets.
Exactly. His entire driving philosophy was centered on what he called Zenith. He wanted a dance partner.
Which basically means a car that actually communicates with you. Like, it responds intuitively to your inputs and maybe even has a little bit of body roll so you can actually feel the weight shifting, rather than a car that is just bolted flat to the ground by aero.
Precisely. It's meant to bring a smile to your face, not intimidate you with raw data. And you can see that emotional connection woven directly into the exterior design, too. It's almost the greatest hits album of the Z's history.
Yeah, the headlights are a perfect example of that. Those half-circle LED daytime running lights, they aren't just a modern shape. They were specifically engineered to mimic the circular light reflections that used to bounce off the clear, curved lens covers of the original 1970s S30.
Yeah, and then you move to the back, and it features those 3D capsule taillights that they pulled straight from the Z32 in the 90s. But I'd say the most defining feature is that silver accent running along the roof with the katana motif.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right, it's shaped like a Japanese sword slicing from the A-pillar all the way down the fastback rear, and it visually lowers the car's center of gravity, gives it the super aggressive four-lane stance.
But the front end, that is where the engineering reality kind of crashes into the retro design, because you look at that massive rectangular front grille, and it almost looks like it is screaming. It's this huge, gaping maw compared to the older models.
Well, I mean, it has to be, because moving from the old naturally aspirated 3.7-liter engine to this new 3.0-liter twin-turbo setup, it completely changed the thermal dynamics of the car. The new engine actually generates roughly 35% more heat.
Wait, 35%? That is a massive jump in thermal load.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So that gaping mouth, it isn't just a stylistic quirk, you know. It is a strict physical necessity. It has to swallow a mass volume of air to constantly feed the intercooler, the radiator, the oil cooler, and the transmission cooler. If you close that grill up just to make it look sleeker, the engine would literally melt itself down on the first hot lap.
Wow. And that extreme focus on functional engineering, it carries right over into the driver's seat too. They brought in Tsuchiyo Matsuda, the Super GT racing driver, to actually design the sport mode layout for the 12.3-inch digital dashboard.
Which is just such a brilliant touch. Matsuda positioned the tachometer so that the red line, the maximum engine speed, sits exactly at 12 o'clock right at the top center of the screen.
Because, yeah, when you are in the middle of a chaotic race, your eyes have to be locked on the track ahead. You really cannot afford to look down at your gauges. By putting the red line at 12 o'clock, the flashing shift lights cross right into the bottom of your peripheral vision. You basically shift entirely on muscle memory and visual instinct.
And believe me, you're going to need every single ounce of that instinct, because the power delivery on the Z Performance is notoriously tricky. This V6 generates 475 Newton meters of torque. But here is the really critical factor. All 475 Newton meters hit at an astoundingly low 1600 RPM.
1600. That is practically idle speed. The moment you brush the throttle on a corner exit, you are demanding maximum rotational force.
Exactly. You are asking those rear Bridgestone Potenza tires to handle a massive surge of power before the car has even built up any real forward momentum. If you are impatient and you just bury your foot on the gas out of a slow corner, the rear tires are going to immediately lose traction against the asphalt. They will spin faster than the car is moving, the back end will violently step out, and you will induce massive oversteer.
Wait, hang on. Before we get too deep in the weeds, for our beginner drivers out there listening, what exactly happens when you oversteer?
Sure. So oversteer is basically when the rear tires completely lose their grip on the road and the back of the car aggressively swings out. It's like the rear of the car is trying to overtake the front of the car.
It's the classic tail-happy sports car trap, basically. Which, I mean, it feels incredible if you are intentionally trying to drift and show off, but if you are trying to set a clean lap time on a track, snapping the rear out like that completely bleeds your speed, or worse, throws you directly into a barrier. You have to feather that throttle with absolute precision.
You really do. And the suspension has to cope with a significant amount of mass while you do that too, because this car weighs roughly 1,630 kilograms. It is definitely not a featherweight track toy.
Yeah, I wanted to push back on that a bit. If it's this ultimate pure sports car, why is it so heavy? Almost 1,630 kilograms is a lot. People expect a Z car to feel like a Miata.
Yeah, but nearly 3,600 pounds is just the reality of modern sports car engineering. You have the heavy twin-turbo units, those massive intercoolers we just talked about, plus a heavily stiffened chassis that is legally required to meet modern crash safety standards.
Right, the safety stuff adds up.
Oh yeah, add in all the modern advanced driver assistance systems, the ADAS, and you get a very dense, heavy machine. And as the driver, you are absolutely going to feel that physical inertia. When you brake hard from 250 kilometers an hour, or when you try to flick the car left and right in a tight chicane, the mass just wants to keep traveling in a straight line. The car demands your respect.
Okay, so we are wrangling a 1.6-ton tail-happy dance partner that delivers all of its torque at 1,600 RPM. And our mission today is to take it to a track that mercilessly punishes heavy cars with clumsy throttle. Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, nestled deep in the Belgian Ardennes.
It is a total monster of a circuit. At just over 7 kilometers long, it's actually the longest track on the modern Formula 1 calendar. And it features a staggering 102 meters of elevation change from its lowest to its highest. They accurately call it the Ardennes Road.
But, you know, the modern manicured version of Spa we see today in the world, it really hides a genuinely terrifying history. When this place was established back in 1921, it wasn't a closed circuit with safe runoff areas and tire barriers. It was a 14.9-kilometer triangle made entirely of local public roads connecting 3 villages.
What's fascinating here is that the singular goal in the 1920s was just to create the fastest circuit in Europe. The organizers literally just paved over dirt roads that ran past farmhouses, dense forests, and telephone poles, and sent drivers out there in cars with zero safety equipment. The danger was just unimaginable.
It was an absolute death trap, and the breaking point finally came in 1966 with Formula One legend Jackie Stewart. He was racing through this high-speed S-bend called the Masticade, which literally routed the cars right between a cluster of farm buildings. Stewart lost control and hit it right.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
His car left the road, smashed through a woodcutter's hut, hit a telephone pole, and ended up completely upside down in a ditch. Stewart was trapped in the footwell. The steering wheel was pinning his legs. His race suit was soaking in high-octane aviation fuel that was leaking from the ruptured tanks. And, this is the craziest part, there were no track marshals to save him.
None at all. He was eventually pulled out by fellow drivers using wrenches they borrowed from the spectator's car. It was that specific, horrifying incident that sparked Stewart's lifelong crusade for motorsport safety, which eventually forced organizers to completely redesign Spa in 1979 into the 7-kilometer closed circuit racing.
But even as a closed modern circuit, the environment itself is constantly trying to kill your lap time. Because the track is draped across this massive, hilly Ardennes forest, it creates its own aggressive microclimates. The infamous Spa weather.
Oh man, the weather. You can literally be driving through bone-dry, sunny conditions at the top of the hill and then plunge downhill into a torrential downpour on the other side of the track. It is wildly cool.
Which perfectly brings us to the legendary 1998 Formula One pilot. It was pouring rain, and the spray kicked up by the cars reduced visibility to absolute zero. It was literally like driving blindfolded into a wall of gray water.
Right after the start, David Coulthard lost control on the downhill section. He bounced off the wall and just slid back into the middle of the track. And the drivers behind him couldn't see a thing until they were right on top.
In the span of 15 seconds, 13 out of the 22 cars in the field were completely destroyed.
Yeah.
You just heard this constant, sickening crunch of carbon fiber and metal as car after car plowed into the wreckage. Tires were flying through the air. It was absolute chaos.
And later in that exact same race, Michael Schumacher is leading, driving through that same heavy spray. He comes up behind Coulthard to lap him. Coulthard lifts off the throttle to let him pass, but Schumacher is completely blind in the wall of water and just slams directly into the back of Coulthard's McLaren at over 200 kilometers per hour.
Schumacher tore the entire right front wheel off his Ferrari. He actually managed to drive the three-wheeled wreckage all the way back to the pit lane, climbed out, and furiously stormed down the garage to physically confront Coulthard because he fully believed Coulthard had deliberately tried to kill him. That is the kind of adrenaline and sheer terror Spa extracts from its drivers.
So that is the historic blood-soaked arena we are taking this heavy, torquey Nissan Z into. The track is defined by its iconic corners. You have La Source, which is the incredibly tight downhill hairpin turn right after the start line. You have the bus stop chicane at the very end of the lap, which, fun fact, actually used to be an active public bus stop back in the roadster days.
But we really have to focus on the apex of fear in motorsport, which is Eau Rouge and Radillon, which is the most respected corner sequence on the planet. You blast downhill through a left-hand sweep over a small river, Eau Rouge or Redwater, and immediately transitioned into a massive 15% uphill right-hander called Radillon.
And the elevation change is roughly 24 meters. You are essentially driving up a multi-story building at full throttle, and because the incline is so incredibly steep, when you turn into Radillon, your windshield is completely filled with just the Belgian sky. You are aiming for a blind clipping point on the inside of the corner that you literally cannot see until you are already on top of it.
You have to commit to the steering angle purely based on muscle memory phase. And this is exactly where the physics of the 1.6-ton Nissan Z Performance.
Hold on, blind clipping point. What does that actually mean for the person holding the controller?
Oh, right. So the clipping point, or the apex, is the geometric inside center of the corner that you want your car's nose to touch to take the fastest line. But in Radillon, because of that steep hill, all you see from the windshield is sky. You can't see the road surface where that point is. You have to steer before you can even see where you're going.
Which is terrifying. And as you plunge down the hill and hit the absolute bottom of Eau Rouge, the downward force of the car's mass combined with gravity is going to completely compress the suspension. The car will likely bottom out, just completely scrape the asphalt.
This creates a terrifying weight transfer scenario.
Wait, weight transfer. Okay, give us the beginner breakdown on that too. Why is that an issue?
Sure, so think of the car's weight like water sloshing around in a bucket. At the bottom of the hill, all that weight violently squashes the front tires down to the ground, giving you immense grip. But as you climb the 15% grade and suddenly crest the top of Radillon, the car experiences negative G-forces. The suspension rapidly unloads, and the car gets incredibly light.
It almost wants to catch air.
Exactly. Remember what we said about the Z's engine? 475 newton-meters of torque, waiting at 1,600 RPM. Your foot buried on the throttle, right at the exact millisecond, the car crests the hill, and the rear tires lose their weight load. It will instantly break traction. The rear of the car will snap wildly out of control.
Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone playing GT7 right now, because you have to factor in the massive 2022 safety upgrades to the circuit. The organizers spent 80 million euros revamping Spa. They tore down the famous chalet that sat right on the edge of Eau Rouge, pushed the walls back, and most importantly, they completely ripped out the forgiving asphalt runoff areas at the top of the hill.
Yes, they replaced them with old school deep gravel traps. In the old days, if you messed up the weight transfer and the rear stepped out, you just slide onto the extra asphalt, catch the slide, and keep going. Now, if you lose the Z at the top of Radillon, that gravel trap will instantly swallow your car. There is zero margin for error anymore.
But if you get it right, if you balance the throttle, trust your muscle memory, and crest that hill cleanly, the reward is pure euphoria. You blast out of course onto the massive hill.
This is where the modern engineering of the Z really shines. The twin-turbo setup utilizes a new recirculation valve that keeps the turbos cool, essentially eliminating turbo lag. The moment you straighten the wheel and become it straight, the power is instantaneous. You can rocket this heavy chassis up to nearly 299 kilometers per hour.
But the relief doesn't last, because at the end of the straight, you enter sector 2 from Les Combes, snaking all the way down to the hill. This is a highly technical, twisting downhill section. And this is where the 1,630 kilograms of mass becomes absolutely astounding.
Yeah, the sheer kinetic energy of a 1.6-ton car arriving at those corners is going to absolutely torture the brakes. If you're constantly riding the pedal, you will induce brake fade, the fluid will boil, the pads will glaze, and you will just lose all stopping power. To survive Sector 2, you have to adopt a very specific driving style, which is V-shaped cornering.
Meaning, instead of taking a wide, smooth, sweeping arc through the corner where you carry a ton of mid-corner speed, you have to break the corner down with harsh angles.
Exactly. You get all your braking done in a straight line, scrubbing the speed while the car is perfectly stable. Then, you sharply rotate the nose of the car at the apex, get the steering wheel pointed straight as quickly as humanly possible, and then unleash the power. A sharp V-shape.
Because if you try to apply all that low-end torque while the steering wheel is still turned, you are basically asking the rear tires to push the car forward and hold the car sideways at the exact same time. The tires will give up, and you'll spin out, brake straight, turn sharp, point straight, blast off.
When you execute that rhythm perfectly, just flowing through the Belgian forest, it is an unmatched feeling. The physical synergy of the car and the track in GT7 is staggering.
Just visualizing it, I mean, you have the moody, shifting light of the Ardennes filtering through the trees, reflecting off that katana silver roofline. The red brake calipers physically glowing behind the wheels as you dive heavily into the bus stop chicane at dusk. It's breathtaking.
It really is. And, looking at the bigger picture, the irony of this specific combination is just spectacular.
The outlaw on the holy ground.
Exactly. The Nissan Z Performance 2023 is this analog feeling, fuel-burning beast. It is so raw and unapologetic that modern European emissions laws literally ban it from existence on their continent. Yet GT7 hands you the keys to take this very outlaw and unleash it on Europe's most historic, hyper-regulated racing circuit. It is a brilliant clash of eras, the golden age of internal combustion violently meeting the pinnacle of European motorsport history.
And you have the best seat in the house to experience that clash. So if you've got your controller in hand, it is time to load into the grid. Respect the mass under braking, respect the torque on the exit, and above all, embrace the challenge.
And remember, don't lift at Eau Rouge, but definitely don't plink at Radillon.
Oh, and before you hit the track, I want to leave you with this final thought. When you finally nail that perfect line through the uphill sweep, balancing 400 horsepower on an absolute knife's edge of grip, ask yourself, are you mastering the machine, or has Tamura's dance partner finally taught you how to lead? We'll see you on the track.